Jewish cemeteries desecrated, physical attacks on the streets, synagogues forced to employ security guards. I'm not referring to Nazi Germany, this is Britain in 2009. Attacks against the Jewish community have more than doubled over the past year. Our last big question, has Britain become more anti-Semitic? You think so, Alex Goldberg, do you?
I think Britain has become more anti-Semitic. I think the levels of incidents, serious incidents against Jews on the street has risen. When my parents went to school after the Second World War, they didn't hear typical anti-Semitic jibes put at them. I did, and my children do.
What are typical anti-Semitic jibes? What are they about? Obviously keeping it...
Things to do with Jews and money, the shouting of the... I think we can say the word Yid, but the Yid word at children, even things around Jesus and the crucifixion, which we won't go into, and so on and so forth. And I think even in some areas, we've heard of stories about do you still have horns, which is a very old anti-Semitic stereotype. So that happens. In the last 5 or 6 years, I'm a visible ethnic minority because I decide to be. I put this thing on my head, it's a yarmulke, and so I get these jibes on the street, and on 1 or 2 occasions, it's been persistent.
Why is it happening?
I don't know. I think anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred. I think that there is no excuse for racism, and I'm afraid that its ugly head has risen again, whether it be anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or racism on the basis of some...
Why anti-Semitism? I don't
think it's ever really gone away. I think after the Second World War, it was kept under the surface. We are seeing age-old anti-Semitic stereotypes come back. And you know, when Essex Scouts go from dib, dib, dib to yid, 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 we have a real problem.
Were you attacked?
Sorry?
Have you been attacked?
I've been attacked, yes. Been verbally attacked.
Physically attacked?
Well, there was an instance where I was punched by a person getting off the train, but he didn't say anything, so I didn't classify it as a racial attack because there was no indication, but it was because I was Jewish. But he may have not liked the colour of my skin, or the colour of my skin, he may have not liked what I was saying, or he may have watched me on the Big Questions and decided he didn't agree with my views.
But Haim, I mean, we hear that the Essex Scout Troop last week, members of which shouted at a remembrance march at Jewish veterans, kill the Jews. There are more and more incidents like this, aren't there?
Well, I don't know. I don't think... I've lived here for almost 40 years, and in all those 40 years, and it's no secret that I'm a Jew and Israeli, I don't think, I have met one incident which could remotely be called anti-Semitic. In all those years, I've probably seen 20 or 25 cases of anti-Islamic or anti-Arab racism against Pakistanis, against people from the Arab world. So it is not my experience, but I wanted to say that there is a confusion and a conflation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, which Zionism has actually put together. So a lot of people are now irate, angry, quite justifiably, so am I, about what Israel has done in Gaza. And the chief rabbi has said himself...
for anti-Semitism in this country, whatever you have to say about Zionism or Israel. I was born in this country, I'm Jewish, I live in this country, and I'm British. And when a synagogue 5 minutes from my house is attacked by arsonists, that has nothing to do with Zionism, and that has nothing to do with Israel in the Middle East, and it has everything to do with people trying to burn down a place of worship for Jewish people 5 minutes from my house. So I'm delighted that in your 40 years here, you haven't felt any anti-Semitic acts. But since I grew up in this country, I can say in my 29 years here, I have, and they're getting more and more frequent. As the statistics from the CST, which monitors these things, along with the Met Police, also illustrates. So there's anecdotal and statistical evidence that you're actually wrong.
Yeah, Tony, there's a lot of statistics backing this up. Tony Greenstein.
Yeah, well, there's lies.
You're pro-Palestinian. You're Jewish, but you're pro-Palestinian.
Yeah, there's lies, damn lies and statistics, so we'll treat them with a pinch of salt. But I have to say that, of course, there's no justification for anti-Semitism, but there's also no justification for the border deputies of British Jews calling rallies in support of the invasion of Lebanon and Gaza in the name of the British Jewish community. That causes anti-Semitism.
But there's this... how do you mean it? Why should that cause
associates
anti-Semitism?
every Jewish person
Tony,
here with the terror in Lebanon.
But why
and
should people ignorantly associate every Jewish person with a foreign policy they may or may not disagree with?
If the leadership of the British Jewish community calls rallies in support of Israel in the name of Jewish people here, of course people will associate that with Jewish people.
What do the stats tell us, Mark?
The stats are very simple, and I'm really, really appalled. I appreciate that you have your own opinions on Israel and on Zionism, but to actually deny the integrity of the statistics is absolute nonsense. The police's own statistics, my own organisation, which is contacted by Jews all around Britain when anti-Semitic incidents occur, also evidence from Jewish communities and police forces all around the world. We've submitted these things to parliamentary inquiry. We've submitted them to European parliamentary inquiry. The statistics are very obvious.
How much have they increased?
They've doubled this year compared to last year, and since the year 2000 compared to the 1990s, there was already a doubling going on.
Why?
You see this with racist incidents. Basically, when something occurs that excites the racists, the number of racist attacks goes up.
What occurs?
After 9/11,
is it all about Israeli foreign policy?
it's not only about Israeli foreign policy. Anti-Semitic incident levels spiked suddenly after 9/11, after the invasion of Afghanistan, after the invasion of Iraq. These things are nothing to do with Israeli foreign policy. The spike this year occurred because of the conflict in Gaza.
The Chief Rabbi seems to disagree with you. He says...
I don't think he does disagree with me, but go ahead and twist his words to make it work.
The Chief Rabbi said quite clearly when he presented his new book that immediately after the Gaza incursion, anti-Semitic incidents doubled. He said what you said. Now, if that is the case, you ask yourself why. If Israel considers itself a Jewish state and a state of all the Jews, and the Jews in other countries, like in this country, in Paris, in the US, are actually totally supportive. Not all the Jews, but the Jewish organizations are totally supportive. Then people are putting one and one together. Now, I'm not justifying, no one is justifying anti-Semitism.
So
it should never be justified.
Haida wants to come in here. Yes, go on.
First of all, let's not forget that 20% of the Israeli population are not Jewish. So, you know, to classify Israel as just being Jews is not right.
It's not me, it's Israel who classifies itself as a Jewish state.
Well, could you let Haida make a point?
20% of the people who actually live in Israel are not Jewish. They are loyal members of that state, they serve in the army, and... now, the point is that if you have a gripe with Israeli foreign policy, then that's great, you're entitled to have a gripe with it. But come to me. I'm Israeli. Come and make your gripe with me, not with British Jews, because just as, and I'm very glad to say, when things happen in Sri Lanka or when things happen in China, nobody takes it out on Chinese people or Sri Lankan people in Britain, and so they shouldn't. They should also not take it out on British Jews.
But is there a danger, though, that if somebody does criticise what is called Zionism in some quarters, or does criticise Israeli foreign policy, all too often debate is stifled by the fact that they're accused of being anti-Semitic, and they're not actually anti-Semitic?
There's a very clear way of defining this, and that is the EU's policy on anti-Semitism. It is written down in black and white what is anti-Semitic and what isn't. And that is the guideline that I accept, and I think everybody should accept, and that is the guideline for debate.
That policy itself is anti-Semitic. I am called anti-Semitic. My family was killed in Auschwitz. I am termed anti-Semitic by this policy and by people who are holding your views. This is ridiculous. This is...
Well, for criticising Israel?
Yes, who has not criticised Israel after Gaza? We're all anti-Semites.
Lots of people haven't.
Anything about Israel, Israelis criticise Israel more than anybody else in the world.
Jonathan wants to come.